All right, Nature Nutters. Oh, this is just absolutely brilliant. I'm so excited. Finally, I have found a death adder. Now, I've wanted to see this snake since I was 8 years old, ever since I saw my mate's pet one. I've driven hundreds, if not thousands of kilometers and walked probably even more in the hope of finding this very snake. It's taken me 32 years, but we finally found it. I'm so very stoked. This snake just captivates me. They're one of those loners. It lays an ambush in the forest for months, weeks on end, waiting for its prey to stumble by. Oh, they lash out at just an insane speed. Like, they are the fastest snake in Australia.
All right, I'm just going to take a moment and pause here to explain the fact that I've just been extremely unlucky. I've been on many expeditions where other people have found them. I just happen to have been in the wrong place at the wrong time.
We'll take a moment here and we'll show you this brilliant snake now. All right, Nature Nutters, this is the moment of reveal. This is something I just love. This little snake is brilliant. I'm gonna uncover him out of the leaf litter here. As you can see, it's not a particularly big specimen. Got to be a bit delicate here. It's obviously now fully exposed and will probably get a little bit agitated. But have a look at this guy. Oh man, they're so cool. So as you can see, he's in that beautiful S configuration, and that's how he sits under the leaf litter. As you can see, he was perfectly concealed. Now, this particular snake is this coloration, which is kind of like, you know, the heavy dark colors of the understory leaf litter, yet they vary quite widely. Out in the desert country, they'll more resemble the color of the sand. In more arid, exposed areas, they'll resemble the different color tones of the leaf litter. A lot of these oranges that, you know, from the Australian eucalypt leaf species. But this guy living in a darker, denser forest is this nice dark sort of stony color, which blends into his environment incredibly well.
All right, so 32 years for the first one, so bad, forget about the second one.
Oh look, have a little bit of faith in me. I know it's taken me 32 years to find this one, but...
So what do you think is that? Why do you think it took you so long?
Oh look, there's a number of factors. I've just been in the wrong place at the wrong time. I suspect there's a lot of it, but we're here in the northern distribution. I've grown up in North Queensland, where we're in the midst of heavy cane toad country. So being that ambush predator that I was talking about, they sit in ambush, and with toads being so prevalent, quite often the first thing a young death adder comes across eventually is a toad. It's not a long shot at all. And they bite these toads and they get a mouthful of the toad toxin and unfortunately succumb to that and die. There's also a number of other reasons why they're becoming, you know, I guess you'd consider threatened or rare in their northern distribution here, and that's, you know, residential land clearing, cane farming, all those sorts of practices. We've got a massive issue in Australia with cats as well, foxes, dogs, all these things. They've got their natural predators like our native kookaburras. You know, they predate a lot on the young if they expose themselves in a sunny patch of forest. The, you know, kookaburras and other birds of prey will come down and grab them. As you've seen from previous episodes, and, you know, obviously hanging out with me, is that there's goannas kicking around everywhere. They're scratching through this leaf litter, eating them as well. So yeah, unfortunately, it's taken me 32 years to find this snake, because all those factors are compounding to make this snake, I guess you'd say, threatened in the area. So I'm really thankful that we have found it finally.
So when do you talk about ambush predator? What can you clarify? What?
Okay, so we'll show you in a moment this particular snake. He's down the buttress of the root here, and I've revealed him by pulling off a bit of bark and stuff, but he's probably been sat in this position for days, weeks, you know, potentially even longer, motionless. You can hardly even see them breathe. He just sits there, and The reason he actually does that is he's got a really cool attribute, and that is this little caudal lure on the end of his tail. It's like a little fake mealworm or a...
frogfish.
Yeah, it's kind of similar to a frogfish, yeah, that's right. So he's got this caudal lure, and when his prey comes into range and he can visually see something coming on, he'll start to rhythmically move this lure around in the hope of encouraging his prey to move into his strike zone. And that's the other reason he needs that incredibly fast strike is, and also strong venom as well. He can't afford to have his prey get away because he's sat there waiting for so long for it.
Is that why the venom is so toxic, or?
Yeah, so Australia, as you know, is such a big, vast country, and like we saw with the brown snakes and the other snakes out west, they can't afford to allow their prey to get away. So the death adders have developed a really nasty, toxic, highly concentrated neurovenom. And it's quite an interesting neurovenom because it's got these postsynaptic blockages of the transmission to your muscles.
Well, I was going off on a bit of a tangent here, but I just wanted to clarify. The toxin works by blocking the communication between the brain and the muscles via the nerve endings. So without that signal from the brain, your muscles just shut down and do nothing, particularly the lungs.
So when the death adder bites its prey, it'll inject it obviously, but that venom very quickly affects the respiratory system. The way the muscles and the nervous system in particular react with the lungs. So generally the prey die from asphyxiation, and it's very quick. And all their other muscles, and quite often, and I've seen it with captive animals where they bite their prey and they just sort of start to quickly relax, and you see their limbs drop.
Very similar to a blue-winged octopus.
Yeah, sort of like that tetrodotoxin where you lose control, like you may be alive but you won't be seen to be breathing and stuff like that. It's not quite the same, but yeah, so the venom very much causes their prey to have asphyxiation and suffocate. There is a bit of a misnomer with the venom that they've got a necrotoxin, which is like if you were to be bitten there, you're going to get gangrene, like frostbite. Your tissues are all going to start to dissolve and stuff, but that's absolute rubbish. That doesn't happen. There will be on the bite site some localized swelling, and that's from the toxin getting into the lymphatic system and starting to make its way through your body. But generally speaking, the symptoms people would experience would be stomach pains and breathlessness and things like that.
So sometimes people talks about their father as Viper, an Australian version of the Viper.
And that's because of their general appearance, that big angled head and that more stocky, robust body. But they're actually more closely related to our brown snakes and king cobras and those other snakes around the world, the elapids, because they've got this, there's a couple of groups of snakes, and that's in relationship to their fangs and where they are in their mouth. So the vipers, they're a selenoglyphorus snake. So they have a long front fang that's on a hinge that they can manipulate independently, and they're quite long and toxic. But
I didn't know that.
yeah, it's a misnomer that they are as well, or in actual fact, being an elapid, they're this proteroglyphous fangs structure, which is just a fixed fang at the front of their mouth. Though for elapids, they do have quite a long fang, so they can envenomate quite easy.
Okay, so I imagine them quite bigger.
Well, this is a juvenile specimen. They do get a fair bit bigger, quite often, a meter's a really large specimen. It is said that they can get a bit bigger. How much I believe that, I'm not too sure. I've not seen near enough, given this is my first one. I've seen some good sized ones in captivity, but nowhere near a metre still. So yeah, that actually leads me to another interesting thing about the death adders is, so they give birth to live young, so they don't lay eggs like the pythons and a lot of the other snakes. So they, a young snake, obviously not as big and physically capable, will start off with small litters, 2, 4, 6, 8. As the snake progressively gets older and bigger and healthier, she starts giving birth to larger litters. It's said that they can lay up to 40, or I should say give birth to 40, but you know, on average, you know, friends that have bred them in captivity sort of get 20 to 30 max. So it'd be unusual to get 40. And yeah, those little baby snakes come out fully fledged, little tiny replicas of their mum, and equally deadly, straight from the, yeah.
Aw. Why would you talk about them like that?
Oh, I don't mean any ill will by it, like being deadly is cool to me. And
Yeah.
they're stunning, beautiful snakes, and oh, I'm just so glad that we found it.
So
I'm
they're only
stoked.
found in Australia, these guys?
Yeah, so there are several species of adders around Australia. Some of them are yet to be classed and fully identified and classified, but there's 7 primary species around Australia, with that could be as high as potentially 13 species. The science is still being done on that, and there's also species in PNG.
Well, beautiful people, that brings us to the end of another episode, but I want to take a moment just to say a little health caution here. If you're going to do what Dougal does, please take some first aid. Know your first aid, know how to apply a crepe bandage or a pressure bandage. Have a lifeline, your phone, a buddy, all that, just in case something does go wrong. Thanks again, see you next time.